Hi, good evening, everyone. Let's start in a minute. Let's wait for others to join. Okay, so now we're going to start with social issues and justice. I believe you have already covered your disaster management and essay part, and we'll have close to 3 weekends to finish off this syllabus. And the first thing that I'm going to start with is that you have to look at the syllabus when we talk about Indian society and social justice. At times, what happens is when going through the syllabus, we look at these simpler topics and we feel that this is something that we can easily address because the social issues syllabus talks about Indian society. It talks about communalism, regionalism, secularism, role of women, etc. But what you have to understand is that you cannot simply target this particular part of the paper without having specific knowledge of things. And I'll come back to this part, that how is it that you need specific understanding of various topics. Now, if you look at GS paper 1 syllabus, you'll find that apart from your history, culture, and geography, you'll find Indian society word mentioned here. And within Indian society, you have to understand what are the salient features of Indian society. And this diversity of India is also a salient feature of Indian society. Then you have to go through role of women and women's organization, then population, then you have to go through regionalism, secularism, etc. So here you have all these topics mentioned in paper 1. Similarly, when you talk about social justice, if you look at GS paper 2 syllabus, you'll find social justice mentioned here. And in social justice, we generally start from the topic of poverty, going through hunger. Then we have to address the issues related to health and education in India. Then you have to learn about what are these various non-governmental organizations, self-help groups. And also you have various welfare schemes which you have to think about. Now also I just want to make this clear right from the beginning, that when you look at this part, welfare schemes for vulnerable section, what generally happens is we look at this topic very factually. We think that this is a factual topic where we have to just learn, we just have to remember all the government schemes meant for vulnerable sections. What are these vulnerable sections? All are part of these vulnerable sections will be discussed with the topic. But if you go through the syllabus carefully, and you also look at previous year questions, you'll find that this particular part actually talks about what are the various issues related to implementation and design of these policies. It is not just about your vulnerable sections, but you have to understand how you are going to analyze these various schemes. Now, this is about the syllabus. What I want all of you to do is that please do keep a copy of your syllabus on your desk. It is not just limited to this particular subject, but all other subjects as well. You keep the syllabus on your desk and you keep going through it on a regular basis. Now, the idea is not to cram the syllabus. The idea is not to remember each and every aspect. But what happens is, if you go through it on a regular basis, you'll somehow remember most of the topics. And something related to it, if it at all shows up in the newspaper, you would know that this is important from my mains perspective. This is important from mains examination point of view. So this is something that you have to do. Keep your syllabus, because I've seen that students who are about to write mains and they're not aware that there is this syllabus of social justice. Now, when it comes to the importance of these two parts, that is Indian society and social justice, and another thing is you can use social issues and Indian society interchangeably. In the syllabus, it is mentioned as Indian society, but they are actually talking about various social issues as well. What are the problems related to population? What are the problems related with regionalism, etc.? Now, if you look at these two parts, you'll find that close to 100, 120, this is generally the range in which you'll find this is the range of numbers or the range of marks that you generally find questions for in the examination. Now, if you look at your geography syllabus, you'll find that geography also holds similar kind of importance. If you look at history, it again, you'll find that it holds a similar kind of importance. And as those subjects are actually, say, they overlap with your prelims syllabus as well, we find that we have, say, certain sense of significance attached to those. But when it comes to subjects like social issues and justice, they go missed. And you'll find that when it comes to your mains paper, it is generally essay, ethics paper, social issues and justice, and your optional, which will actually help you gain more marks, which will help you get more marks. Because increasingly, the type of questions that they are asking from this particular part are not very difficult, but they are very tricky. So if you go in without having a proper understanding, without having specific understanding of the syllabus, it is not going to help. Now, this is the module. I hope you have gone through it. You would have got this attached to your schedule. You'll find that we have divided the entire syllabus in 13 modules, which will cover one by one, starting from salient features of Indian society and diversity in India. And poverty is going to be the issue or the topic when we transition to social justice. So all these 7 modules are related to paper 1, and then you have poverty and these other issues which are related to paper 2. And also, when we talk about the kind of questions that they ask, you'll find that there is a lot of fluidity, in the sense that you'll find questions based on women in paper 2. You'll find questions based on elderly in paper 1. So these two subjects, these two parts have, say, a great amount of overlap, and we do not have to look at these subjects in watertight compartments. And also, as increasingly we look into number of questions that have been asked in the past, you'll understand on your own that what I am trying to say right now, that uh, there is a lot of overlap when it comes to questions. So they'll ask question on population control, which will be related to women empowerment. So the way we are going to approach this subject, I would request you all and I would need you all to interact, because it is not going to be a monologue. It is these topics are fairly simple. You will be able to understand them easily, but to develop perspective, to help you understand how you go about your introduction in the paper, how you have to think about a specific question, about a particular question. This is something that will come out of our interaction. So these sessions are going to be more and more interactive after the introduction. So this is your first day, this is your introduction, so we will try to keep it very simple. The Even the interaction part is going to be a little less, but as we go through the syllabus, as we move forward, you'll find that I will ask you to interact more and more. Okay, so the number of lectures for this subject, you'll find that you have lectures till 4th of November, that is Saturday. So till that time, you'll have all your weekends engaged in this subject. So this is the syllabus, and as I've already told you, you get close to 5 to 6 questions when it comes to social issues, that is paper 1. And these 6 questions, it is at least 60 marks, at least 60 marks, because there'll be questions which will be 15 markers as well. So if you look at this, the number of questions, if you look at the marks that these subjects have, it is very much. And then when it comes to paper 2, you'll get easily close to 4 or 5 questions every year. So at times they have asked only 3 questions, but yes, even when it comes to social justice, it'll have at least a weightage of 40 to 50 marks. Subject like polity, in terms of marks, they are equivalent to a major subject like geography when it comes to their weightage in your mains examination. So it is better not to take this subject lightly, because when it comes to society, we say that it is very simple. We understand the nuances of society, but the kind of questions that they have asked in the recent past tell a different story altogether. That the questions are very specific. So it is not a subject where you can think that I can just deliver a lecture, you can take down notes, and that is all, that you'll find all the questions in the examination. It doesn't work that way. Even though in the previous batch, when which was held before your mains examination, a lot of questions were there in the examination. But again, when you see those questions in the examination, you would not be able to identify that it is the same concept that was taught in the class, unless until you understand everything properly. So now when we try to understand the syllabus, you have seen that you have various topics mentioned in paper 1, and we are going to start with paper 1, and only after we cover poverty, we are going to transition to paper 2 discussion. And I hope I'm clear in that regard. And once you go through the syllabus multiple times, you'll understand that what are the topics mentioned in paper 1, what are the topics mentioned in paper 2, and how they're different, how the approach is going to be different as well. Okay. So in paper 1, what you have to do is, the first thing is that you have to understand the background of Indian society. What are these salient features of Indian society? How these institutions, like your caste system, like the institution of family, the institution of marriage, how these systems looked in the past. So we are going to look at these social institutions and their background. And then what we have to do is, we have to understand everything in the light of change. Because if you look at society, just think about it. The population which was there in, say, back in 1990s, has it changed or not? And you would say, yes, it has changed. How it has changed? It has grown a lot. Also, when it comes to population, there are other changes as well, other demographic changes. So some of you who have already been preparing for a long time, who have been going through newspapers, you'll find that there is this report which was based on elderly, where they say that Indian population is aging. And 20, 30 years down the line, we'll find that a huge proportion of Indian population is going to fall in the elderly bracket, that is 60 plus years. So what are the issues associated with that? What can be the possible consequences? Are we going to need more healthcare when it comes to elderly? Can we assume, can we suppose, or can we think that these elderly people can contribute to the economic development of the country or not? So there can be various questions, various issues related to that will come to when it comes to that particular chapter. But what you have to understand is that the society has been undergoing change over the years. So what we have to do in the syllabus, we are going to pick up an institution, say the institution of caste. We are going to look at that institution in the light of tradition. Then we'll see that there are various factors because of which our institution is changing. The institution of caste is changing. And you can also vouch to this idea. You can say the strictness or the rigidity of caste system has been diluted. The caste system has not been able to maintain that continuity since it began. Right? So every institution is undergoing change. So we'll look at those institutions in the light of tradition, and then we look at those institutions in the light of change? What are the factors responsible for that change? What are the consequences of that change? And this chart shows it clearly. So you have to look at various institutions, social institutions like caste, marriage, etc., their background. Then you have to think about what kind of changes have been brought about in this social institution. What are the factors responsible for this change? And then we are going to look into what are the issues that arise out of this change, because any change can be positive or negative. For instance, if I ask you a question right now, I say whether globalization had positive or negative impact on Indian society, what would be your answer? Some of you might say that globalization had a very positive impact on Indian society. Look at the economic development, look at the technological development. Then there can be others who would say, no, globalization has brought a few negative things with it as well. Then there be others who would say, who will take a balanced stand, who would say that, look, these are the positive changes brought about by globalization, and these are the negative impacts of globalization. So these, if the changes, if the consequences are positive, it is a good thing, it is a good sign. But if these consequences are negative, we have to also think about what can we do to fix these issues, which can be summarized as your way forward. So you would have heard of this word, way forward, when writing your conclusion in mains answer. So they would say that there has to be an introduction, then there has to be body, and in conclusion, you can write a way forward. That how we can go about this, how we can say uh, uh, brace to the impact of these negative changes. So this is going to be the basic structure, the basic framework when it comes to a paper one. Now, when we say society, as I said, that if I ask you what are the issues related to women, you can simply tell me about various issues like rape. You can talk about eve teasing. You can talk about sexual harassment at workplace. You can say that there is inequality when it comes to our politics. There is inequality in matters of education, etc. So you can have general answers. But if you look at the questions, and here you have a few previous year questions mentioned in front of you, you just go through these questions, look at these questions, and you'll find that it is a mixed batch. Yes, there have been questions as simple as what are the positive and negative effects of globalization on women in India? But then there are difficult ones as well. That how, and not very difficult once you understand the syllabus. But if you look at these questions now, you would think that, okay, I can somehow manage 1 or 2 points or 3 points maybe, but I would not be able to write a complete answer. So if you look at these questions, they are very specific. How women empowerment can lead to a control in population growth. So linking population growth with women empowerment. Similarly, they have asked questions about cryptocurrency in paper one. So when I say cryptocurrency, you would think that this is a matter of paper three. It can fall either in economy or your science and technology part. But they have already asked a question on cryptocurrency in paper one, that what is the impact of cryptocurrency on Indian society? Similarly, if you think about matters such as work from home, right? Work from home, which has been the norm for the past 2 years and which is slowly going away because of COVID and lockdown. Most of the organizations ask their employees to work from home just to avoid that situation. Now, this is a simple thing. This is something that we know. There can be a lot of, say, people who are actually working from home. But they asked a specific question in paper one saying that how this work from home can impact the institution of family. Right? So the question was very specific. And also, issues like these cannot be covered in the classrooms. But do not worry about it. We will develop an approach, maybe in a matter of 2 or 3 or 4 classes, so that you understand that if at all there is a question which you were not prepared for, how would you go about it? And this is the approach, this is the perspective that you actually need in the subject. Because the questions that you are going to face in the examination are going to look new. They're always going to be new. And can you please tell me if you have looked at the previous year questions, particularly of paper 1? Did you go through or did you look at the mains paper or GS1 mains paper for this year, September 23? Okay, so only a couple of people have actually gone through the mains paper. So it is always better to look at the previous year questions, uh, and particularly for this examination, because that's where you understand what has to be approached for this subject or the entire examination for that matter. And what I would want you to do is you just take up your previous year questions and just go through them so that you understand, because otherwise you'll find it say boring or not very interesting. In a matter of days you'll feel that this is a very taxing subject. The topics look very simple and I'll do it on my own. But the idea is, if you look at the question paper, you'll have a lot of questions in your mind, that if a question such as this arises in the examination, how am I going to go about it? So those questions, that curiosity is going to help you understand the approach, right? So uh, as you see that this is a subject from which is primarily covered in mains examination, you can always say that these government schemes are also asked in your prelims paper. But those government schemes, we are not going to cover those schemes factually here, because those schemes find a mention in your current affairs, they get covered there. So if at all there is an analysis in the newspaper, or say there is an editorial about any of the government schemes in the newspaper, it is covered there. Here we have to develop a different approach. So no, I'm not denying that because someone has asked a question whether we study this subject for prelims or not. So I'm not denying that you would not find questions from justice in your prelims examination, but that is not going to be our approach, because those schemes are fairly simple in nature, and the kind of questions that they ask in paper 2 are different. So you do not just have to memorize the schemes, that this is the objective, this is uh, the composition of, say, one of the commissions, etc. Those things are not required here. Here you would have to understand that what are the problems related to the design and implementation of that scheme. And also you can ask me a question right now, that there are so many schemes, how are we going to possibly remember all of them? How would we know that what are the issues related to implementation of, say, Swachh Bharat? How would we know what are the problems related to implementation of smart city program? And no, you cannot remember everything. So there is a basic approach, there is a basic framework, and we'll try to fit in all the schemes in there. We'll try to understand if at all there are implementation issues, in what direction you'll find those issues. So those things will be covered. It is going to be our last lecture. So last lecture of social justice, where you'll understand how to go about these schemes. Okay, so just look at the question. So are we losing our local identity for global identity? Again, a specific question. Then they're talking about the vicious cycle of gender inequality, poverty, and malnutrition, and how it can be broken through your self-help groups. So relating multiple topics at the same time. Okay, just give me a second. Sorry. Yeah. Now, how you have to study? What we are going to do is we are going to interact a lot in the classroom. So you have to understand the concepts, be a part of the discussion that we are going to have, because I'm going to ask you, if this is a question, how can you introduce this question? If this is a question, what all has to be covered in body part? If this is a particular issue, what are your views on it? Which is actually going to help you understand the concepts better, which will help you to break these down into dimensions and make it easy to understand for yourself. So what you have to do is in the classroom, you just try to understand the basic concepts. And also, what you have to do is you have to make brief notes only after you get your PPT. So once you get your PPT, you start making your notes then. In the class, you just listen to me, you just try to understand, you just become a part of the discussion. And also just keep a pen and paper. If you feel that, okay, this is an example that I've given in the class, there's something that you would not remember during revision, You can just simply mention it there, and you can use it along with your PPT for creating your final notes. And how to create notes, we'll come to that part as well. So in the classroom, you understand the concepts, you become a part of the discussion, and you create your brief notes. Then along with it, you have to look at your previous year questions. Now, again and again, I'm repeating, you do look into your previous year questions so that you understand what are the kind of questions that have been asked in the past, because this will help you understand what are the kind of questions that they can ask in future. It'll give you that basic approach. So please do look into the syllabus. Please do look into your previous year question paper as well. And along with it, this subject is going to need a lot of writing practice. Like any other main subject, is going to need writing practice. So what I'll try to do is, every day starting tomorrow, I'll give you a couple of practice questions for you to write at home, because this is the weekend batch, and obviously you'll have say a full day of classes. So what you have to do is, you revise one concept on say one weekday, and you write question related to that on that day itself. That's how you can go about this writing practice part. So I hope I'm clear till here. Now when it comes to your note making, I'm so first thing that I told you is that you make your rough notes, which is basically only the examples or something that you feel that I might not be able to remember. You can just write those things during the classes. After that, when you make your final notes, what you have to do is use your PPT, and you'll understand the structure of the notes. You'll understand the framework as we take up various topics in the subject. What you have to do is, if this is a piece of paper, you either leave a margin on the right hand side or a margin on the left hand side, or maybe in the gutter, that is towards the bottom, or maybe at the beginning of the paper. And you make your notes only in the rest of the part. So if you remember, when as kids, when we were supposed to solve our maths questions, we always used to make this line, so that if there is any rough work at all, we can just do it here. Now this is not meant for rough work. What this is meant for is your current affairs. So you read newspaper on a regular basis. I hope so, because now you are going through a main subject. So I believe that everyone has covered all the other subjects, and they are reading newspaper as well. So if you go through the newspaper, you'll find all these topics that are there in your syllabus. You'll find some or the other topic in news at any given point of time. So for instance, this elderly report was in news a week ago. Similarly, there was some issue related to women, or an article related to women 3-4 days ago in the Hindu newspaper. So if you if you get something of which is actually significant for the subject, which is significant to the topic, you get a good example. You can use this area, you can use this part of your notes to add those things. There can be a few concepts, new concepts, that you might find a mention, which might find a mention in your current affairs. So you can take those things and write them here. So this is the part reserved for your current affairs. So for instance, when we talk about issues related to women, we say that there is inequality when it comes to matters of politics. So women do not have equal representation. Rather, they do not have adequate representation. And on that line, you'll find that recently the assembly in Karnataka was formed, and there was a news article saying that there was no women representation in the Karnataka assembly. So these are this can be used as an example if at all there is a question that shows up in the examination about say representation of women or the political empowerment of women. You'll have a current or you will have an example which is directly related to current affairs. Similarly, you can talk about women reservation bill. So what you can do is, when it comes to issues related to women, you can just mention it there. And obviously you would have created notes for women reservation bill, because it is important, it is there in news for a long time. So you can just take that paper and club it with issues related to women. So if a question is asked in paper 1, you are ready. And at all, if a question is asked in paper 2, you are ready as well. So I hope you got the idea of how to create these notes. So take this paper, divide it in 2 parts, just keep one of the part a little smaller compared to the other one. Use this part to write your notes, to make your notes, and use the other part simply to attach or to mention your current affairs. to maybe pick up examples from current affairs and you can mention them here. Now, when it comes to note making, we can just do one thing. We can, as we proceed through the subject, you'll understand, looking at the PPTs, you'll understand how you have to create notes, because the PPTs are I have created the PPT in a synoptic fashion, right? So they look more like your synoptic notes of various subjects. So you'll understand how to create notes. Now, what all do we need to study apart from the classes and your current affairs? So your current affairs, yes. Class notes and PPTs, yes, these two have been discussed. Apart from this, you have to go through your additional reading material that is being uploaded on the portal after every class. And also, what I would suggest is you take up your sociology NCRTs of class 12th. You need not go through sociology NCRTs of class 11th, because that talks more about the subject or the domain of sociology. But when you look at your class 12th sociology books, you'll find that there are two books, both of which talk about Indian society and social change. These are going to be your readings for paper 1. When it comes to paper 2, apart from your class notes, you would not need anything else uh, but current affairs. So your classroom notes and current affairs are going to suffice for paper 2. When it comes to paper 1, just have to read class 12th NCRTs of Indian society and social change. There are 2 NCRTs. Just keep reading them on a regular basis. And by the time we finish our lectures, you would have already covered these NCRTs. So yes, you might find a few new concepts there. In terms of concepts, you would not find a lot, but yes, you can definitely find a few good examples there. And also it will help you to understand the subject better, because what happens is, when you are sitting in the classroom, when you are listening to the teacher, you feel that, okay, I've understood the thing and I'll remember. But what happens is, it fades away in a matter of days. But when you read carefully, you'll find that you are more attached to the ideas that are there in the book. You're trying to understand between the lines, which gives or which enhances your conceptual understanding. So these 2 books will be sufficient. No need to take up Ramahuja and go through social issues. All those things will be covered in the classroom. And I hope you are getting the point. You have understood what I mean when I say that you have to create notes, the way in which you have to create notes, current affairs that you have to go through, and also your readings. Now, again, initial few slides, I'll let you know when our syllabus starts. Till now, we have not started our syllabus. We are just discussing. We were just having a basic introduction about the subject, how to create notes, etc. Now, for another few minutes, what we'll do is we'll try to understand the basics of society, so that you are better prepared for what comes next. Because our syllabus starts with salient features of Indian society. Before that, you do not have to remember anything. You just have to understand that what is society, what are social change, what is this interaction between individual and society. Because you see that we as individuals are continuously interacting with the society at large. Now, this society is bringing about changes in us. At the same time, we are also bringing about changes in society. So we have to first understand what is society and what is social change. Need not remember anything, not have to worry about the terms, the concepts. Now, when we talk about society, the first thing you have to understand is that it may or may not talk about people living in a definite territory. And also, before we start with that, I'll tell you one thing, that when it comes to definition, of various aspects, this is a subject where you'll find defining something, defining a social process, defining a social institution is going to be hard, because the institutions, the society is continuously evolving. It is not static. There are a lot of changes that are coming up. So to define it aptly is going to be a task. And also, your examination or your examiner or your question paper is never going to ask you to define something when it comes to society. Just take an example so that this idea is clear and you do not get fixated with the definitions, because I'm going to contradict the definitions while discussing the definition itself. Just think about it. When it comes to family, as an institution, we say that it is a relationship, or say rather a durable relationship between more than two people who are either related by birth, marriage, or adoption. That's what the definition is, the basic sociological definition of the institution of family. Now, if you think about this, is there a possibility of a single person residing in his place and be considered as a family? So, for instance, during the COVID period, you find that there are a lot of people who lost their lives. Entire families were washed away. And there is a high possibility that a family, or say the mother and the father, died, and only the kid was left in that family. Or everyone else died, only one individual was left out of that family. And you can say that, yes, it is a one person family. But when it comes to the definition says it has to be more than two people. Also, they'll say that a family shares the kitchen, because that is what our idea is. If you're staying with your family, you share the kitchen, you share the economic resources. But think about this: when you move out, you're staying, say, in Delhi, you're staying at your place of work, say in Bangalore, in Chennai, or maybe you're out for studies in some other city. You stay there, you live with your friends, you share a flat. Now, you people are not related by birth or adoption or marriage, but you are staying together and you are sharing the same kitchen. You can be considered as family. And also, once a person asks you about your family, who's your family, who are your parents, you would directly relate to your family living in your hometown. Even though you are not sharing that common kitchen, you're not sharing the same roof, but it can also be considered as family. Now, why did I go into that discussion? To make you understand that these definitions are not important, one. Second, these definitions are continuously evolving. So what we have to do is, we have to, rather than sticking to the definition, we have to understand the concept, we have to understand the feature of various institutions, and that is going to do our job really fine. Starting with society, it says a group of people who share a common culture, live in a particular area, and feel themselves to constitute a unified and distinct entity. Take example. When we are talking about Indian society as a whole, now within this Indian society, you can find there can be various social groups based on caste, various social groups based on religion, various social groups based on language. Now, these social groups themselves, if you look at these social groups, yes, they'll be based in one area, they'll be living in a particular area, they'll be sharing a common culture. So people who are coming from, say, Karnataka, they're sharing a common culture. Now, these people who live together, who share a common culture, and they feel themselves to constitute a distinct entity, now this particular unit can be called society. But also, you can find that it need not always be the case. Because if we talk about Indian society, a lot of changes have happened. Now, within the Indian society, you have multiple states, you have multiple linguistic groups, you have tribal groups who themselves share a different culture. Now, within this larger society, that is Indian society, you have multiple smaller societies or social groups. So you do not have to get into the definition of social groups and society, but you have to understand, when we talk about society, people who are sharing or experiencing a similar culture are said to constitute society. Now, also within this society, there'll be multiple individuals and social groups. Now, these social groups are also interacting amongst themselves. So there can be conflict between two social groups. There can be, say, a matter of cooperation between social groups. One social group can influence others' culture. They can influence their language. So these social groups, these individuals within that society are continuously interacting with each other. Now, society is said to be the total sum of these individuals and social groups and the web of relationship between these people. That is what the idea of society is. Now, this society has certain features. The first one is that this idea of society is abstract. That means the society is something that you cannot touch. You can always talk about Indian society, but it is not a distinct physical entity. It is abstract. Also, within this society, you'll find various likenesses and differences. That means you'll find people coming from the same racial group. You'll find people coming from the same linguistic background, people speaking similar languages, people behaving in the same in a similar fashion. These can be the ideas of likeness. Similarly, you can find a lot of differences based on color, based on race, based on caste, religion, language. So there can be both likeness and differences in society. Also, you'll find there can be conflict and cooperation in society. So you find various communal issues, rights happening across the country. What are those conflicts? Similarly, you'll find cooperation among society. Can anyone here give me an example of cooperation? It can be an example of cooperation between multiple religious groups. It can be the idea of cooperation amongst political groups. It can be idea about people in general cooperating with each other, right? So there can be conflict and cooperation in society. Yes, so you're giving example from say your modern history. So Aditya says non-cooperation movement can be an example of cooperation within society. Also, this society, within this society, you'll find people are interdependent. For instance, various states are dependent for their food, or particularly rice, on Haryana and Punjab. That is what interdependence in terms of their economic and basic needs. Similarly, society is the entire society. Within society, various social groups and individuals are interdependent on each other for their various basic needs, for their basic interaction. Their cultures have, over the years, they have interacted with each other, and they have taken a few elements from each other's culture. They have rejected a few, but they have also taken up similar elements. So, for example, on the border of every state, you'll find, when you speak to people, say you are from Maharashtra, you go to Karnataka border within Maharashtra, and you'll find the way people speak their language is different compared to other places. And you'll find a lot of influence of the other language, a language from another state, on their mother tongue. Similarly, if you go to any other state, or the border of these states particularly, because it is very easy to identify these things there. So if you go to another border, to the border of another state, you'll find that the cultures are also pretty much, there are a lot of similarities in their culture. The way they perform their rituals, the way they perform the ritual, or they perform the various rituals during marriage, right? The way they behave with people in general. So a lot of influences you'll find on different cultures. So one is interdependence and the other one is interaction. Society is a process and not a product. As already explained, society is continuously evolving, because this relationship between people, this interaction between people, is very dynamic, happening as we speak right now. This is also an interaction. Now, with this, we bring about various social changes. So, society can never be said to be a final product. You cannot say that the caste system, or say you take up any other institution, that this is the caste system, these are the features, and this is a fixed product. It is going to remain the same. No, it is not. It is going to evolve. It is going to change. The changes can be negative, positive. That is a different aspect, but it is obviously going to change. So the society is always in a process. It is never a product. And you'll also find that when it comes to the questions that they have been asking in the examination, are more about this process, are more about this social change, that what has changed. So the ones who have already looked into this year's questions, you would have looked at a question which was based on marriage, that marriage as a sacrament, or rather, let's put it simply, that marriage as an institution is changing. What are these changes, right? So the kind of questions that they have been asking are actually targeted on social change. So work from home is a change, so they ask a question on that. Cryptocurrency, so the way in which our economy functions, or the various tools and aspects of economy which are undergoing change, They've asked a question on that. Similarly, they're talking about how the socialization of children has changed, how the functions of family have changed. So the questions are always generally targeted on change. So we have to remember that whenever we look at any social institution, any say institution, or any social institution or process, we have to always think in terms of change, that what are the factors and what is the change that is happening. Now, society also provides a system of stratification. Now, stratification will be covered with caste system, but to give you a brief idea, just to give you a basic idea, you can understand that in every society, people attach value to different things. Just think in terms of job. Now, there can be people who are performing manual labor. Then there can be people who are civil servants. Right now, everyone here is sitting in this classroom to become civil servants in the future. So you attach more value to civil services. Similarly, you'll find not just in matters of profession, you'll find that there are rich people, there are poor people, and everyone has a position in society. And based on these values, based on their wealth, their prestige, society puts various social groups in a hierarchy. So you always say that the rich are on the top, the politician, the senior bureaucrats, they are on the top. And when you think of a daily wage laborer, you'll always say that they are at the bottom of this hierarchy. So yes, in terms of human values, you can say everyone is equal, everyone is human. But generally, society attaches different value to different things. And now this idea of arranging various social groups on the basis of their wealth, on the basis of their prestige in the society, this is what? This is social stratification. Now, you not have to again remember the definition. The definition has been given with caste system, and we'll come back to this idea of stratification, because they have also asked a question on stratification this year. So it was not a direct question, it is a question based in caste, but again, caste is a form of stratification. Interdependence is an essential element of society, has been already covered. Now, also, you'll find that within any society, there'll be a basic code of conduct. Just think about it. Respecting your elderly. When you speak to someone who is elder to you, you generally use words, generally talk to them in a plural sense. Similarly, touching their feet when you meet them, greeting everyone when you meet them. Once you enter your office, you say good morning, good evening, whatever time of the day it is. So every society will have a certain code of conduct. And on the basis of this code of conduct, they'll say that if these things are not followed, you can be penalized. For instance, when we talk about caste system, which is one of the social institutions in Indian society, you'll find that a person was not supposed to marry outside their caste, which is a norm that comes with the social institution, which is a norm which becomes a part of the society. But if someone doesn't follow that norm, they get penalized. So society sets up certain norms, a code of conduct, and expects you to behave in that fashion. You're not supposed to speak loud, or you are not supposed to speak rudely to anyone in public, particularly to the elder ones. You're supposed to show them respect. So this is the code of conduct which has to be followed. Now, every society will have different code of conduct. There can be, you'll find various differences once you move from one society to another. Within this whole Indian society, if you move from one state to another, you'll find that these basic norms, or this basic code of conduct changes. So these are a few features or characteristics of society. You do not have to remember anything. This is just to give you a basic idea. And now we come to the most important part, which is social change. Now we are saying that society is undergoing change. These social institutions are undergoing change. There can be various consequences of this social change. Now, these social changes can be brought about by multiple factors. There can be internal factors and there can be external factors as well. So, can someone here tell me about any internal factor in case of Indian society, any internal factor which has brought about social change? Any internal factors? Something that is born, or something, or some idea that came in our own society and changed it. Anyone, internal factors which brought about changes in the Indian society. So some of you are saying education. Great, yes, it is. Now, caste system cannot be mentioned as a factor here, because caste system is an institution of Indian society. So yes, Sugandhi is talking about Periya's ideas when it comes to women empowerment. Technology, yes, technology can also bring about changes to society. Now, this technology can come from within and this technology can come from outside. So, if you think about your various social religious reform movements, for instance, abolition of sati, what happened? A social change was brought about. And what are those factors? Those factors are internal. So, you can just mention a couple of examples when it comes to internal factor. Similarly, when you think of external factors, you can just think of advent of Islam in a country. So with Islam, they have their own value system, they have their different rituals, they brought about a lot of changes. Similar idea is Christianity. Then there can be other multiple religions. Also, you can think in terms of Western education. You can think in terms of any other technology that has been brought about in our country. So there can be multiple factors, they can be either internal or external, which bring about change in society. So these factors also become important, because if you look into a syllabus, they have also mentioned about globalization, urbanization. So Himanshu is saying globalization is one of the factors. Absolutely, yes. Globalization has brought about a lot of changes in Indian society in the way we speak right now. What is this? Impact of globalization. We're using a language which came from outside. A lot of technology that we are using right now also, again, a product of globalization. So globalization has brought about various changes. So if you look into a syllabus, two of the forces of change, one is globalization and the other one is urbanization, have already been mentioned. Apart from that, we are also going to look into other ideas of change. And whenever we talk about change, we are always going to look into various factors which have been responsible for that change, because they have asked these questions multiple times. So they have asked a question about the impact of globalization on women. Similarly, they have asked a question on impact of globalization on the elderly. Also, they have asked a question, this year they asked a question about the role of technology or the impact of technology on children. Okay, so they can always ask about these questions. These topics are mentioned in the syllabus. But apart from this, we are also going to look into various specific factors when it comes to our various social institutions. So I hope the idea of social change is clear. Now, when it comes to social change, now this social change, because this term social has a lot of things. So you can say technological change can be considered as social change. So just think about it. Think about the idea of washing machine. Think about the idea of washing machine. To some, it might be a simple or a basic change in technology, but it has and it is still having far-reaching consequences or far-reaching changes, impacts on the Indian society. Just think about how a simple technological advancement and the introduction of washing machine would have changed the role of women. Now, previously they were supposed to wash clothes with hands. Now they can get it done with a washing machine in a matter of minutes. So we will definitely cover the changing role of women. I'm just giving you an idea right now, just a basic overview, that how something as simple as a washing machine or something as simple as a pen can bring about a lot of changes. And now these technological changes can also be considered as factors of social change and also social change in themselves. The idea of education, as already highlighted by you, just think about it. In your ancient and medieval times, you'll find that your education was based in religion. It was various religious scriptures which were taught in the classroom. But now the newer form of education, now the contemporary education system has more of say not just more, is completely based in science. So the basic idea behind education has changed. Previously it was more about going through the scriptures, that what the scriptures say is right, we consider that and we proceed according to that. But now you think about scientific inquiry. The moment you see a statement in the newspaper, you start thinking that how is it right or how is it wrong, what can be its impacts, right? So this Israel Palestine conflict, what can be the consequences for India, for instance? Now you approach various issues, various aspects of life in a scientific manner. What is this influence of education, particularly Western education, which was changed during your British times in your modern history? Similarly, there can be political changes as well. Can someone highlight what kind of political changes has the Indian society undergone? What kind of political changes has the Indian society undergone? Because this is again a fairly simple question. Yes. So from a monarchy, we have transitioned into a democracy. So before your British rule, and even during your British rule, the political structure was different. But then, with freedom, after our with because of our freedom movement, we got freedom from the Britishers, and we established our own structure. We have our own constitution, and we are living in a democratic manner. So this is what a political change. Similarly, if you think of economic change, a lot of things have changed. From barter system in the ancient past, today you can see, you can think about various e-transactions that you do. You can think about UPI, you can think about cryptocurrency, right? So a lot of economic changes. Similarly, there have been demographic changes. Now, various demographic changes will be covered with population, because that is basically a study of demography. But you can think about how the composition of the population has changed, how the number of the population has changed, how population density has changed in various areas in our country. What are those demographic changes, which are also covered as or covered under this all encompassing term, which is social change? Now, the final idea is various socio-cultural changes. As already highlighted, the clothes that we are wearing, the language that we are speaking. What are these socio-cultural changes? So all these, once you put all these together, you can say that these are the various dimensions of social change that have happened in our society, and not just our society, but in any society. So these demographic, socio-cultural, economic, political, technological, etc. What are these? These are various dimensions of social change. Now, you would say that this is a fairly simple thing, but this is going to help you a lot when it comes to answering the trickier questions of your question paper. So when they say what has been the impact of women, what has been the impact of globalization on women, you would not understand how to proceed. But these dimensions will give a structure to your answer. That in economic dimension, these all changes have happened. In the socio-cultural dimension, these all changes have happened. So these things are, or these dimensions are going to help you with the structure of your answer. Yes, so Aditya is has written about the transition from a tribal polity to a democracy today in the Indian context. Yes. Now we are saying that both society and individual impact each other. So there are two ideas. One is impact of society on individual, and then the other idea is impact of individual on society. Now, when we say that an individual can impact the society and bring about far-reaching changes, can you give me an example of any individual who has brought about far-reaching changes in the society? There can be multiple examples, but just one would do. So yes, the usual suspects: Mahatma Gandhi, Rabindranath Tagore, Ram Mohan Roy. Perfect. Ragni, I'll answer your question. You'll get the answer to your question once we start with various social institutions, that how we have to do it, right? So Dadabai, Nauroji, etc. So you can have examples of various individuals who brought about far-reaching changes in the society. At the same time, society is always influencing you as well. Now, this influence of society on the individual is called, or is the basic idea of socialization. So when we were saying that the society has set norms, etc., and everyone is supposed to follow those norms, and if they do not, they get penalized for it. What is that influence of society on individual by setting up these norms? Now, also to understand socialization, it is fairly simple. So to understand socialization, what you have to do is just think of a newborn. Just think of a newborn baby. Now, that baby is not aware of anything but the basic biological instinct of hunger or pain, etc. Apart from that, the babies are not aware of anything. But the family nourishes them, the family teaches them a lot of things, the school teaches them a lot of things. So they teach them how to eat food, what is healthy, what is not, how to behave to your elderly, what is your religion, what is your caste, what is your name. So all these aspects of life are being taught by family, by school, by their peer group, because you learn a lot in your peer group. You learn a lot on the playground. You learn a lot on YouTube these days. So there are various forces, there are various elements in society who have this influence on the individual, and their entire persona, their ideas, everything is shaped by society. Just think about your idea of success. And if I ask everyone here that please write down your idea of success, and you'll find most of us have a similar idea of success, at least to a certain extent. What is this impact of society on individual? Similarly, a lot of your political ideas are shaped by what is happening around you. A lot of your ideas about caste system are shaped by what is happening around you, what is there on the news. What is this impact of society on individual? And now this process is simply called socialization, wherein an individual learns various rules, habits, what are various values. For some, equality is important. For others, they would say that I would rather go for freedom than equality. So everyone has different value system. So some attach more value to, say, material goods. Others might be attaching more value to the unknown, to the spiritual world. So all these ideas are ultimately shaped by the society that you live in. The way you speak to people is shaped by your society. The language that you speak is again shaped by the society that you live in. What is this process called? This process is called socialization. Now again, this term socialization looks a little sociological, and you would feel that it should not be, say, included. This kind of discussion should not be included in social issues that basically covers GS paper. But this year itself, they have asked a question on socialization of children. And also you'll find that they do not go for the difficult or the complex terms that you find in sociology. They'll keep it simple, but at times there's no better way to use a few terms, a few sociological terms, to make you understand the point. And also, believe me when I say this, that most of the terms that you'll find in sociology will be actually be very simple. You'll be able to understand, even if you have not heard of the term, you'd be able to dissect it and find out and figure out that what it actually means, as compared to geography, as compared to science and technology. If you do not know a technological term, you do not know that term. But when it comes to society, in the context of the question, you'll be able to understand that what that term means. And also, they do not ask you about definitions. So what we understood, that an individual can impact the society At the same time, society is always impacting individuals. Now, with this, we have covered the basic idea, the basic understanding of Indian society, that what, not Indian society, but society in general, that what society is, what are various components of society. You can think about demography as one of the components. You can think about various social institutions as one of the component. Then we thought about what are these social changes, what can be the factors of social changes, because ultimately the idea will revolve around social change. Now we are entering into a syllabus, that is, what are the various salient features of the Indian society. Before starting with this, can you tell me a couple of salient features of Indian society? Any features that you know already? Caste system, yes. Patriarchy, great. Any other salient feature? Family, the institution of family, and particularly joint family, yes. So yes, apart from this, there can be other salient features. The first salient feature that should come into your mind is diversity. That Indian society has a lot of diversity in terms of language, in terms of religion, in terms of caste. That is one of the salient features. And also, it is mentioned as a separate topic in your syllabus, but it will be covered with various salient features of Indian society. Now, if we start with salient features of Indian society, before we enter into it, let's just briefly go through these three classifications of society, because from this, your entire background will be prepared. Now, the first idea is, based on your economic activities, you can classify society. So there are people engaged in agriculture. There are people engaged in service sector, like me, delivering services. Then there are people engaged in industries, in production. Then there are people who still go around as hunters and gatherers, your tribals, right? So there are various modes of economic production in our society. So based on these economic activities, you'll find people who are engaged in hunting and gathering. Then there are people who can be engaged in agriculture. Then there are people who are engaged in industries. And then you can think of post-industrial society. Post-industrial society is the society that we're living in. That more importance, more significance is given to services. Services are the ones which actually dominate the economies of most of the countries. And also, if you look at this in a chronological fashion, you'll find that the say ancient man or the ancient people, they were basically hunters and gatherers. They did not know about agriculture. They did not know how to produce their own food. So they relied on nature. So they'll go around in the forest, take whatever produce is there and have it. Keep some for future and have it. Similarly, wherever the vegetation was, say, scarce, you'll find that people were involved in hunting. So they'll hunt animals for their meat, they'll hunt animals for the skin, to wear clothes, right? So hunting gathering society. From there, once they understood how to produce this food on their own, the society transitioned into agricultural society. Now they knew that I can clear this land and I can grow whatever I want in this way. And hence the society transitioned into agricultural society. Post that, you find with your industrial revolution, a lot of industries started coming up. So you cannot, it's not that the society jumped directly from agriculture to industries or to advanced industries that we see today. You see that there were a lot of mechanical industries, handloom industries. Those are also industries, right? So from agriculture, it transitioned into industrial society. And now we see that the industrial system is very advanced. And now more and more reliance is on service sector. And also, if you move from industrial society to post-industrial society, there can be other changes as well. The way our social institutions are, say, structured has changed. So can we say that, as Aditya has mentioned, that patriarchy is one of the salient features of Indian society? Can we say that the uh, patriarchy as a social institution has been diluted over the years, has been diluted once we move from industries to service society or post-industrial society? And yes, the answer is yes, which is very obvious, because you see that women could not contribute a lot to industrial production, but yes, they're contributing a lot to service economy, which has given them, say, if not equal, but a better status in the society, because not everyone is that empowered, or not every woman is that empowered. We still find a lot of instances of sexual violence, domestic violence against women, and we have not reached that place, or we have not reached that status where we can say that now our society is completely egalitarian. But the idea of egalitarianism has improved. Even women, people from certain sections of the society, or say particularly people from the so-called downtrodden castes, have also done better. So things are changing. So it is not just a matter of economic activities. The change in economic activities has brought about a lot of changes in the society as well. That will be covered with the social institutions. Similarly, on the basis of residential trend, because you find that there are people living in rural areas, in villages, then there are people living in urban areas, then there are people still living in forests, there's people still living in areas which are not that easy or in difficult terrains. There are people who are moving from one place to another. So there can be rural population, urban population, and you also have tribal population at the same time. Now, rural and urban, fairly simple to understand, and also a lot will be covered with urbanization. That what is this? What is urbanization, and what are the changes brought about by urbanization? Everything will be covered there. As far as your tribal population is concerned, we are going to discuss tribals in our last chapter with your vulnerable sections. So when it comes to vulnerable sections, there are 2-3 vulnerable sections that we are going to cover specifically, and for the rest we'll have the framework as to how framework of how to analyze various schemes related to vulnerable sections, because the questions are actually not targeted on or are not focused on vulnerable sections, but they are actually focused on various schemes for vulnerable sections. Okay, apart from this, on the basis of value system, we can classify the society into traditional and modern. Now, to understand this, I would like to ask you a question first, that what according to you is modern? What is your idea of modern? Because it is very simple to say that if I ask you that on what basis you would call someone as modern. So if I show you two pictures, there can be a person who's wearing the traditional dhoti and kurta and maybe a turban, and then there can be another person who's wearing a fine suit. You would instantly say that this person who's wearing the suit is modern. So on the basis of their appearance, you would say that they are modern. But what can be the other factors, or what is your idea of modern? Scientific temper, great. More logical, yes. What else? So thinking better, having good understanding, okay. Clothing can be one, yes. Himanshu is saying equality, the increased role of technology, yes. Progressive, logical, analytical, okay, great. Okay, Jen is saying urbanization is something that he would also relate to modern. Okay, great. More scientific than superstitious, yes. Okay, now you have three important forces of change, rather four. One is industrialization, second one is urbanization, third one is globalization, and the last one is modernization. These are four forces of change that become very important, and you'll find that if you look at our society in the past, say 2 or 3 centuries, you'll find that these have been the most important forces of social change. That with setting up of industries, people started moving out, people started migrating to those industrial areas. So the institution of family broke down, which is a major social change. Similarly, with urbanization, the same thing happened. With learning new languages, people started getting exposed to newer cultures. And also with modernization, you find that you have developed a scientific temper. With modernization, you find that religion is not that important now. So these four major forces of change are something which have shaped the world that we are living in today. So they have been functioning in varied degrees in various places, because you'll still find areas that are untouched by anything or any of these forces, right? So if you go to say very difficult terrains of say Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, you'll find that people are still not aware. You still do not have cell phones there. People are not a lot aware about the importance or significance of education. Then you find your tribals living in forests who are also untouched by technology. So you have various examples, right? But more or less, you find that these are the four major forces of change which have shaped the society that we live in today. So when you say that what is this modern, because all the other things will be covered. Industrialization has already been covered with your industrial revolution, that what kind of changes happened, and you need not remember the factual details for this subject. But yes, you understand the setting up of industries, so on and so forth, is what industrialization is, and what were the changes that were brought about by industrialization. Globalization and urbanization will be covered as a part of syllabus. So what I'll do here is modernization, which is not a part of your syllabus. I'll just give you a brief understanding of what modernization is, because it is also an important force to understand social change in Indian society. Jamia is giving example of various tribes from Amazon. Then Aditya is giving example of your Zaravas. Great. Yes. So when you think about modernity, just think about these aspects. Again, you do not have to remember these things. You do not have to remember, you just have to understand. And these are all the ideas that you guys have given. I've just consolidated them. The first idea is the idea of secularization. Now, just as you understand secular as something that is devoid of religion, that's how you understand secular. Secular is something that is right opposite to religion. In this context, you have to understand that secularization is one of the important features of modernization, or one of the aspects of modernity. You'll find that over the years, say starting from ancient medieval India, you'll find that the importance of religion has gone down. So initially, you'll find that your education was based in religion. Your political system was based in religion. Because you remember your medieval rulers, they used to claim their authority, they used to claim their authority from God or from religion, that we are the messengers of God and we can rule you. We have been sent here by God to keep everything in system. So they claimed their political authority from religion. Your education was based in religion. So religion was one of the most significant, say, ideas, or one of the most significant social institutions back in the day. But with modernization, you find that religion is diluting. So even though you find that every now and then you can always find instances of, say, a very, say, say high religious fervor in society, but overall you can say that religion, the importance of religion has declined because your education has become scientific. Your value system has changed. Now it is not completely based in religion. Now you do not say that just because it is mentioned in this religious scripture, I believe in this. Because if you think about religion today, and I say that science is the new religion, so it's just about the idea. Because previously, or say in your ancient and medieval times, everyone used to find justification in religion, that see, because it is mentioned in this religious scripture, this is right. But now you always try to be scientific, that see, here I have proofs, here I have data to substantiate this statement. Even in matters of religion, that why do you have to walk barefoot in a temple or in a place of worship? We also try to look into the scientific explanation of those things. So various superstitions or various rituals that say we find in Indian society, we try to legitimize those using science. So in that sense, I'm saying that religion has lost its importance, and to that extent, science has covered it. So secularization is one of the aspects of modernity. Then you have rationalization. Now this rationalization is also related to your scientific temper. That if a cat crosses your path, you would not walk, or you would not say you would not take steps until you perform something, some ritual, or maybe you will take another way. That's what used to happen in the past. But now you will try to be logical about it. You'll try to use your rationale rather than the superstitious idea that was there. So rationalization, again, another aspect of modernity. Then increasing influence of science and technology. So one is scientific temper, and then the other part is the increasing influence of science and technology. Now see how look all around you, look all around yourself, that how engraved we are in technology. Without technology, we feel that we would not be able to function. Without electricity, we feel that, so uh, say an hour, say an hour or maybe two, it depends again which area you come from, is more than sufficient to make us lose our patience if we do not get our Wi-Fi, if we do not get electricity. So science and technology has an increasing influence over the society. Then you have this emergence of nation state. Now just think about this. In most of the societies previously, in most of the states previously, you find it was generally monarchy, and the idea was that of kingdoms. And in those kingdoms, you'll find people today, which you can call nationalities, but otherwise, you'll find people coming from various cultural backgrounds living in the same kingdom as one political unit. But then, particularly during your First World War and so on, you find, yeah, and even before that, the idea of nation state had seeped in, that we are people, we are German speaking people, we should stay together. These people who speak Polish should create the separate state. We people, we want to, so the it is again attached with the idea of democracy, that we want to govern ourselves. Why should one person sitting there on the top tell us what to do and what not to do? So the idea of democracy and nation state seeped in almost at the same time. So people wanted to govern themselves, and what better system to put in place apart from democracy? Then this idea of industrialization with your industrial revolution, and even before that, you find that industrialization started happening. More and more number of people started moving out of agriculture in search of jobs in industries. So with this peculiar phenomena of industrialization happened. Along with it, capitalism and commodification. Now, previously, you see that it was generally the state which controlled the entire territory, because even if, say, in context of India, even if the jamidars had rights over the land, but ultimately it was the the final decision had to come from the high command, had to come from the ruler and the court. But then the idea of private property, so I hope you have all read about these terms like capitalism, socialism, etc. in your world history. So I'll just give you a brief idea. I would not get into the finer aspects, finer details of it. So with the idea of private property, that people can have their private property, this idea of capitalism also started. That why should state decide what is going to be the product of this commodity? Why should state decide how am I going to sell in the market? So let the forces of market decide what value they attach to a particular object, or what value they attach to a particular product or service. So with this, you see that a lot changed. The entire economic system of most of the countries across the globe changed. Various ideas changed. New laws had to be brought in place. And also, we find that previously it was barter system, and not it is not just limited to that. You find that we have started attaching monetary value to most of the things. So it is always a matter of money, right? Even people are treated as commodities. So we can very well say that the system of slavery in the West can be considered as an equivalent of what we call commodification today. But it is not just limited to that. You find that every product, everything has a price. You want to bypass a line, you can just simply pay a price, a monetary price for it. And what I mean by the idea of commodification here is going to extend to human lives as well. And this will be explained in a better way with your role of women. That this is one of the issue, that how we commodify our women. They're treated like objects who do not have any feelings, whose ideas are not considered, who are always given a backseat for that matter. But in terms of economic system, you'll find that every commodity started having a price. So think about, say, just giving you a basic idea, just think about water. Now, water holds the price. Any other service, any other commodity holds a price. Now, you do not find the simpler means of exchange. Previously, if you wanted rice, you could have traded your wheat, and both the parties would live happily. And they can decide the value. They can decide how many, say, kgs of rice for wheat, which was decided simply on the basis of demand and production. Till now, our market or our economic forces work on the principle of demand and supply. But again, a lot has changed. It has become very complex in nature for that matter. Yes, Aditya, the idea about women having a culture of wearing black sari during Makar Sankranti. Yes, so you can say, so the idea that I was giving was that even in matters of religion, even in matters of, say, various rituals that we have, now we try to look for scientific idea behind it. We try to have a scientific explanation for it. That's what the idea is. That's what clearly explains the idea of rationalization and the increasing influence of science and technology in our lives. Along with it, urbanization also happened. So with industrialization, newer urban centers started coming up. People started moving to these urban centers for better quality of education, for better quality of life, for better economic opportunities, etc. Now we are going to deal with urbanization separately as a complete topic. What are the issues, etc. But you understand that someone has also mentioned this, had also mentioned this in a discussion, that urbanization is also related to the idea of modern. Then your expansion of mass media. Mass media as a means of information, mass media as a means of entertainment is something significant in today's society, in our modern world. Now, a question for you: is the contemporary Indian society modern or traditional? And this is going to be your, now, I'll tell you beforehand that this is a very simple question, and questions of this nature would not be asked in the examination, but it is going to help you understand that how I have to go about something, how I have to go about question. So forget about the introduction and conclusion. The ones who have already written a lot of answers would be able to write, say, good introduction and conclusions. But everyone, what everyone has to do tomorrow is that just take up this question, try to think about the body part of it. Just conceptualize the body part of it. If the question says, is the contemporary Indian society modern or traditional? How do you find out? The main question, the most important question here is, how do you find out whether Indian society is modern or traditional? Let's take your ideas today. Let's take your ideas today, but tomorrow you have to do this exercise, or maybe tonight after the class, you have to do this exercise and try to figure out, if I want to look at India and if I want to say whether Indian society is traditional or modern, what all aspects of Indian society do I have to look into? What all aspects of Indian society do I have to look into to figure out whether it is traditional or modern? Because you already know that these are basic ideas behind modernity. These are various elements of modernization. But what all aspects of Indian society do have to look into to get this answer? So I ask you this question now. So I would not disclose your answers so that the other person should not get the idea what you have to write. Everyone has to storm their brain and figure out for themselves that what is going to be the body part of this question. Okay, yes, Neha, you're right that this is one aspect that you can look into. Any other ideas about what all aspects of Indian society you have to look into to figure out whether it is traditional or modern? Anyone else who would want to contribute? Okay, yes, Aditya. Yes, Abni. But just see one thing, just look into one thing, just remember one thing, that when a question such as this is asked, you do not have to think only in terms of factors of modernization, but you have to think in terms of, I'll just write it here, you have to think in terms of aspects of or various features of Indian society which can help you get this answer. You can write it features. You have to look into various features of Indian society to figure out whether it is traditional or modern. Okay, yes, Yama, right. Great, Ragini. You are also thinking in the right direction. Same goes with Sneha. Great. So, this is something that we'll discuss tomorrow before we start our discussion on the topic that we leave at today. Okay. Now, before we start with this part, now we're going to take up various features of Indian society, briefly look at them, and then we'll start with our major topics. But before that, let's take a quick 5-minute break and meet at 7:10. Let's meet at 7:10. Take a quick 5-minute break so that you can fill your bottles, because I want to as well. Okay, let's meet in 5 minutes. let's get back to our discussion. So I hope everyone's back. Okay, to answer this question, you have to try writing the body of this answer tomorrow. But to give you a basic overview, what you have to do is, first thing you understand is, one idea is the transition from tradition to modernity, and the other idea is elements of tradition and modernity that you find in various social institutions today. These are the two ideas with which you have to proceed with this answer. So, to think of various features of Indian society, what you'll find is that there are economic features, there are political features, and there are socio cultural features of Indian society. Think about the economic system, how it has changed. Similarly, think about the political system, how it has changed, which has already been discussed with modernity. Apart from the change, or apart from the transition from tradition to modernity, what you have to do is, you also have to think about what are the various elements of tradition in the modern society, and what are the various elements of modernity in the modern society. Take example, if you think of our, say, religion, we were saying that secularization has happened. One of the features of modernization is secularization. So religion is not that important today. Religion does not hold the same kind of significance today. That is one idea. Also, you'll find that when it comes to matters of religion, you'll find a lot of rituals. You'll find a lot of rituals which are followed to the day. Those are traditional rituals, but you still find them in modern society. So, one idea is the decreasing or the declining significance of religion, and the other idea is various rituals, various practices related to religion which still hold significance in the modern society. So, can someone give an example of such kind of ritual? Any ritual related to religion which is still found in modern society? Anyone? Most of our festivals, Ragini is talking about festivals. So, most of our festivals uh, are actually coming directly from our religion, which is celebrated to the day. Yes, the idea of Havan, Muslim women wearing burqa, great. The way marriages are being carried out till today, yes, you find elements of tradition. Similarly, if you think about, say, diversity, one idea is that how diversity has changed. What has been the transition when it comes to diversity? Because diversity is another feature of Indian society. Here you find all the features of Indian society mentioned, two of which are economic and political system, and rest of the other ideas are actually related to socio-cultural dimension. So when you think of diversity, some of you might say the diversity has increased. Who all say that diversity has increased in the Indian society? And also give your explanation for the same. That why do you think diversity has increased? Because we see linguistic diversity, religious diversity, cultural diversity in Indian society, how it has changed. Okay, so Abhinav says that it has increased over the years. Okay, and why do you think so? Anyone else who says that diversity has decreased? Okay, so one answer can be globalization. Because of globalization, you find the that we speak multiple languages, multiple international languages, Spanish, French, etc., being taught in our classrooms. Similarly, you find that diversity has increased in the sense that the number of religions, particularly established religions, have increased. In the traditional Indian society, it was one religion, but it has changed over the years. Now you find Christianity, Zoroastrianism, Islam, etc. But also, if I say that diversity has decreased, can anyone substantiate this? That how diversity has decreased in the Indian society? Ragni is saying that it has remained more or less same, but has started to come to the forefront because of mass media and awareness. Okay. Okay, so the idea of melting pot, that different cultures came in, they had interaction with the Indian culture and they created something new, but it will add to the diversity. Just think of your language Urdu, which is basically an amalgamation of English and Hindi, sorry, Persian and Hindi. So, but it adds to the diversity. Can anyone say that how diversity has decreased? So great. Balaraju is saying that because of secularization, we find that various cultural practices are not being carried out, which decreases the diversity. Also, just think about this. Just think about tribal diversity. A lot of your tribal religions, which were very, say, which were animistic religions, have been subsumed under Christianity and Hinduism. Similarly, we have lost a lot of languages. At one hand, we say that we have now international languages, but what happened to various dialects that were spoken before? The diversity has gone down because we are using more and more universal languages. We have forgotten the our ancient languages and our mother tongues. So in that sense, you can also say that diversity has decreased. Now, when it comes to the institutions of family and marriage, what kind of changes have happened? That the families are shrinking, the size of the family is decreasing. That from joint family system, we have transitioned to nuclear family system. Also, there are few features of family that the eldest male member of the family was supposed to be the leader of the family. Until date, we find that that traditional practice has been preserved. Similarly, when it comes to stratification, the most important way to stratify Indian society in the past was caste system. But today, caste system has not been able to maintain its rigidity, and now it is being replaced, or it is being uh, pushed out with the class system, wherein the occupation that you have is more important compared to your caste. When it comes to value system, in our value system, in the Indian value system, you find that tolerance, love, respecting your elders have always found an important place. But now it is getting diluted because of the influence of Western culture. But at the same time, we have still preserved a lot of our values, a lot of our traditional values. And on the same aspect, on the aspect of value system, they had asked a question back in the year 2017, wherein this said that love and tolerance have been an important feature of the ancient Indian society, of the traditional Indian society, and are still significant in the modern Indian period as well? They have already asked this question. So marriages have been replaced by live-in relationships. Great, which is a change. Okay, so the basic idea is, I'm not going to say deliberate a lot on this, because most of these features will be covered with salient features of Indian society. Plus, you have to write answer to this question. So the question said, is the contemporary Indian society modern or traditional? But to find out whether Indian society is modern or traditional, you have to look into various features of Indian society and look into them one by one and find out what elements of tradition and what elements of modernity can be found in these features, which will actually give your answer. So you have to look at this question in two ways. One is the transition from tradition to modernity, and the second thing is elements of both tradition and modernity. Now, why did I keep this here? Because you find newer questions, say on women, on elderly, on children, wherein you would not be able to conceptualize a structure, that what is the structure in which I should proceed. Because generally what happens, the moment we look at the question, we start writing. We think that, okay, this is what I have to write, and we start writing without focusing and without giving due importance to the structure of the answer that we are writing, which is very important. Because if you do not have a good flow in your answer, the evaluator is simply put off. They would not be very interested in, say, reading your answer properly, because you'll find there are articles in the newspaper at times which lack flow, which lack structure, and we are simply put off, and we simply jump to another article which is more interesting. And also, these newer questions that are coming up every year, they need you to understand that you have to conceptualize every question before you write answer. So if I say, what kind of changes has globalization brought about in the lives of women, what do? You think about various dimensions of life of women. Similarly, if it is a question on the various social institutions that we have, what you have to do is you have to look into various features of that institution. This year as well, they have asked a question on the changing nature of caste system, that the caste system is changing, and they have asked you how. I'm not giving you the exact language of the question, but the subject matter was the same, that how caste system is changing. Just think about this. If you want to figure out how caste system is changing in the modern Indian society, you would have to think of various features of the caste system, and you would have to go through those features one by one and look at them in the light of tradition and modernity, that what kind of changes have been brought about to this particular feature. What are the changes in this feature? Endogamy was a feature of the caste system, how it has changed, or whether it has changed at all or not. We will come to caste system, but the idea is, if you get these newer questions, you should be able to conceptualize yourself. And what I say is that just keep going through the questions on a regular basis. Look into the questions of this year, look into the questions that came back in 2017, 19, etc., so that you get a better idea that the kind of questions that they're asking need a lot of conceptualization beforehand. And also, you can ask a simple question, that if I sit and conceptualize, if I start making those mind maps, I lose at least 4 to 5 minutes. But the basic idea is, you should be able to conceptualize faster than you are doing right now. And how can you do that? Only with practice. So if you practice questions every day, if you're not able to write questions on a particular day, it is okay. But you have to at least conceptualize a couple of questions. And by the time we finish our entire syllabus of social issues and justice, I would expect you to have conceptualized each and every question which came in the past 5 years. We are going to discuss a few questions in the classroom as well, but you have to at least conceptualize those questions yourself. And you'll see and you'll find that slowly and steadily, your speed of conceptualizing these questions is increasing. Right now, the structure that I have shared might not make a lot of sense to you, because we have not started with the syllabus actually. But once you understand this, once you look at the questions, you'll get to know what importance this kind of structure has. Okay, so now that we have to start with various features of Indian society, out of which religion is one, out of which diversity is one, family and marriage, stratification, value system, all these are various features of Indian society. And what we'll do is, as we have already looked into the idea of value system, one is in the light of tradition and modernity. Apart from that, we will discuss with the question that we have a few, say, ideas that we have retained from the ancient past. And now we have to start with various salient features of Indian society. And the first one is going to be caste system. The political and economic changes or those aspects are covered in respective subjects, but you very well know that what basic change has come about. Okay, so you're asking a question that why are we giving this importance to Western culture? Now, see, the thing is, when we say we are giving importance to Western culture, we have to see it is not everyone who is giving importance to Western culture. There are still traditional forces that are into play, which are trying to bring back the traditional Indian system. And also, you'll understand all these things with globalization, because everything, every change, every interaction will have something positive or negative. Because we need not necessarily look at Western culture in a negative light. It is not just negative. Because with Western culture, we are now more focused on scientific temper rather than superstition and religion. With Western culture, there has been an influence of increasing influence of science and technology in our lives. Yes, technology, if it crosses that threshold, if it crosses that line, becomes poison. So just think about it. If you say use social media, I believe most of you here would be using social media. You'll find that if it is limited, if your time invested in social media is limited, it can be productive, because you'll get to know about a lot of new cultures, you'll get to know about a lot of opinions of other people, you'll get to know about newer things. But if it crosses that line, if you start investing a lot of time in technology, or if you become dependent on technology, it becomes a problem. So there are positive and negatives of each and everything. And we do have to look at positives and negatives in the light of positive and negative in the future. But right now, do not think of Western culture as just something negative, because it has brought about a lot of positive social changes in our society. Yes, Himanshu, the question was on the sanctity of marriage, and we will discuss that question when we come to the social institution of marriage. Today, what we'll do is we'll try to understand the basics of caste system, and we'll also try to touch how the caste system is changing. To start with caste system, now the basic idea that you already have of stratification, which says that every society has a way of putting people and social groups in hierarchy. So in the West, you find that it has mostly, it was mostly on the basis of class. So what class are you coming from would decide the place that you find in the social hierarchy. Whereas in India, you find the most important way to stratify society, or the most important uh, feature of stratification, was caste system. So caste system was something which held importance over all other forms of stratification. Now you think of social stratification, that it is an arrangement of groups and individuals in hierarchical positions on the criteria like wealth, prestige, ethnicity, gender, etc. So you find that people, or most of the societies around the world, have traditionally been according a lower status to women. So on the basis of gender, they're stratifying the society. Then on the basis of wealth, the society is generally, you find around yourself, the society has been stratified. But in case of India, one peculiar form of stratification is caste system. And we'll come to a question that what is caste system? How is it different from Varna system? Now you know about, I think everyone knows basics about caste system, that how it works. But let's start, before we get into caste system, let's start from the ancient past. In the Vedic period, we say that Varna system was prevalent. which basically became very rigid during your later Vedic period and ultimately gave way to the caste system. Now, Varna system had a few features which caste system has adopted, but the caste system is slightly different from Varna system, which we'll come to in a bit. Now, to understand Varna system first, the society was stratified into four Varnas. That is, on the top, they kept the Brahmins, then you had the Kshatriyas, then Vaishyas, and then your Shudras. And then there was another social group which was kept out of this hierarchy, who were called the untouchables. This is a basic hierarchy of Varna system. Now, when you look at caste system, you'll again say that the caste system also works in the same fashion. But you'll find that within these social groups of Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, etc., you have a lot of castes and subcastes. But the basic hierarchy of Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra remains the same. Now, caste system is again a way of stratifying the society, is way of putting people in hierarchies, and also a way of division of labor. So you can talk about caste system in terms of arrangement of division of labor. Because if you remember, in your caste system, if you're coming from a particular caste, you're supposed to say pursue an occupation which goes with that caste. So for instance, the priests were supposed to be Brahmins. The Shudras were supposed to take care of all the basic services which have to be provided to all the other sections of the society or all the other castes. They were the ones who were involved generally in manual labor. Then the Kshatriyas had the task of providing security to the society. And also your Vaishyas were the ones generally involved in business. So your caste system is an arrangement of division of labor. I hope the idea of division of labor is clear. Then it is also an arrangement of inequality. That these people or these social groups are not equal. They were not considered equal. They had different rights. They had different disabilities, which we'll come to in a bit. And also an arrangement of hierarchy, because on the basis of this division of labor, on the basis of this inequality, people were placed in a hierarchy. This is what the caste system is. Now, this caste system prescribed various norms, values, which people of those caste groups had to adhere to. So they said that one is not supposed to marry outside his or her caste, which is one of the norms. And if you do not follow that norm, there can be consequences. So basically, caste system is an arrangement of division of labor, inequality, and hierarchy in the traditional Indian society. Now, what we have to do is, rather than trying to remember this definition, what we'll do is we'll look at various features of caste system. We'll try to understand these features. Right now, you might not be able to conceptualize that what are these features, etc. You might know a few basic details, but we'll put everything in structure so that any question related to caste system, if at all shows up in the examination, you'd be able to answer it. Because we'll cover the features, we'll see what all changes have been brought about to all these features, and how caste system as a whole is changing. What are the factors of change, and is there continuity in the caste system? Are there elements of continuity in the caste system? So all these things will be covered in this discussion. So first thing, your features of caste system, then your factors which maintain continuity and which bring about change, or rather which have brought about changes in this institution of caste system, and how caste system as a whole is transitioning. So all these things will be looked into this discussion. Starting with the features, if you know that the caste system has divided the society into various segments on the basis of their caste. Now, this segmentation or this separation is on the basis of the idea of purity and pollution, which is again based in religion. Right. So when you think of your Varna system, because ultimately your caste system has evolved from Varna system, in Varna system, you know that there was this basic idea of religion, that people who came from the head of Lord Brahma became the Brahmins. The ones coming from shoulders became the Kshatriyas. The ones coming from the belly became the Vaishyas. And the ones originating from the feet became the Shudras. Right? This is the religious idea. You do not have to remember it. Just have to understand that this was on the basis of purity and pollution. That as you go up the hierarchy in the caste system, the caste will become purer and purer. So the Brahmins are considered to be the purest, and your Shudras were considered to be polluted. Again, the idea is based in religion. Similarly, on the idea of this purity and pollution, they have created this hierarchy. They have stratified the society, that the Brahmins come on the top and the Shudras come at the bottom. Again, important feature of one of the most important feature of caste system is that you get your caste identity ascribed by birth. So your caste depends ultimately on the family in which you are born. You can say that membership by birth is one of the most important feature of caste system. And this caste system works on a works with heredity. So if you're born in a particular caste, you get ascribed that caste identity. Say you are born in family of Brahmins, your caste will be Brahmin. And also your children who will be born tomorrow, or maybe somewhere in the distant future, they will also be Brahmins. And their children will be Brahmins. So this caste identity is carried on or is passed on through generations, which makes it hereditary in nature. So the membership is by birth and hereditary in nature. Now, with every caste group came a definitive and restricted occupation. Definitive means that every caste group was supposed to perform a particular function in the society. So the Brahmins were supposed to be the priests, they were supposed to be the teachers. The Kshatriyas were supposed to be the fighters. Then you'll find there are various other caste groups as well, because it is not just limited to this fourfold hierarchy, but you have multiple castes. You have more than 4,000 castes in India. So you have castes who are the cobblers, who are the ones who were supposed to perform that task. So that occupation is definitive. And also when it comes to occupation, it is restricted as well. So only a Brahmin can perform the functions, the role of a Brahmin. Only a Kshatriya can perform the functions and role of a Kshatriya. That makes it restricted. Then there was this function, or there was this feature of endogamy. Endogamy means marrying within your own social group. So the caste system prescribed that people coming from a particular caste group are supposed to marry within that group. They cannot marry outside their own group. And you see that which is being followed till day. That caste becomes one of the most important uh, say factors which decide which family or which girl or boy you are going to get married to. So endogamy, that is marrying within the same caste, is also an important feature of the caste system. And do not worry, we'll come to the idea of continuity and change, that what has remained the same and what has changed. Then there were restrictions on food, drinking, and social behavior. You'll find that the Brahmins were not supposed to eat non-vegetarian food. What is that? Restrictions on food and drinking. Then the Shudras were not supposed to carry water or take water out of the well meant for the so-called upper castes. What is that? Restriction on their social behavior. The so-called lower caste students were not, or people were not supposed to attend schools. They were not to be seen or say seen mingling around with other caste groups in public. What is this? Restriction on social behavior. And this social behavior was decided by your privileges and disabilities. So there can be disabilities that you cannot do this, you're restricted to do this. And also you find various privileges attached to a particular caste. That, for instance, the Brahmins were not supposed to pay tax on land. They're not supposed to pay any taxes for that matter, either on produce and land. What is that? A privilege. What is a privilege? Privilege is something that is limited to a certain section, which does not follow to all other sections. Because if something is provided to all the sections of society, it becomes a right, because it is a right of everyone. For instance, you have right to equality in constitution, that everyone is equal. But when it comes to privilege, it is limited to a particular section. So these so-called upper castes were privileged for that matter, and then there were disabilities on the so-called lower castes. And also, when you write upper and lower, please remember, you use your words carefully and attach this so-called with it, because it is not something that you are saying, but it is being generally said, because otherwise it sounds very, say, demeaning to the ones termed as lower. Then every caste group had a distinct style of life, right? The way they'll wear their clothes, the kind of rituals they'll follow. For instance, the so-called upper caste used to wear that sacred thread, or what you call janeu in Hindi. What is that? A distinct style of life. The way they'll carry out their activities were also different. Then every caste group had their conflict resolving mechanism. What you call khap panchayats today were basically those caste based councils which used to decide on matters of caste. For instance, someone has asked a question regarding marrying within the caste. I'll just go through the question with change. So, if someone is not following any of the rules prescribed by the caste system, what happens to them? They'll have a meeting of this council, they'll have a meeting of this Ka Panchayat, and they'll decide that this is the penalty or this is the reward for your action. So this conflict resolving mechanism, and you can say that, are these Khap panchayats relevant today? Yes, in a certain section, in certain regions, but generally the conflict resolving mechanism today is what? Your court of law. So the conflict resolving mechanism has changed. Otherwise, every caste had their own Khap panchayat or their own caste council, which used to decide on the matters of caste and all other local matters as well. Then also in the caste system, you'll find there are a lot of local and regional differences. So these local and regional differences are there till today, and you'll find that so for instance, there are both South Indian and North Indian students, East Indian, West Indian students here, people coming from all across the country. You'll find that there are few castes which are there in, say, certain sections of the country or certain regions of the country, and they're not present at all in others. For instance, Kayasth, that is one caste group. Now they are present here in the eastern part of the country, north and east part of the country, but they are absent in the southern part. What does this show? Regional differences. Similarly, the caste-based hierarchy also changes from one region to another. So for instance, if a caste is dominant in Punjab, they'll have a better position in the hierarchy. But if that caste is not that, say, wealthy or not that rich and dominant in, say, Rajasthan, they would be accorded a little lower status when it comes to the caste hierarchy. So there are various local and regional differences when it comes to caste system. And also you'll find that the the distinct style of life or their privileges, disabilities also will change from region to region. So having these regional differences is going to be a norm when it comes to Indian society. So when we talk about marriage, when we talk about caste, when we talk about family, you'll always find regional differences. And even within the same region, if you take a particular state, you'll find that there'll be differences when you go from rural areas to urban areas. So these regional differences or regional disparities is something that you'll find all across institutions in a country. Why? Because of the sheer size of a country and sheer diversity of a country. Because even within your own state, if you move from one district to another, you'll find that the dialect has changed a little. The language remains the same, but the dialect has changed. What are these? Regional differences. So similarly, you have these local and regional differences when it comes to the caste system as well. Now, all these are what? These are various features of caste system. And if at all you have to, or you are made to define caste system, you can simply use a few important features of caste system and create your own definition, because that's something that I've done here. uh, this definition is coming out of these features only. So the most important ones can be taken up and a definition can be created, and it follows to other topics as well. Once you understand the features, out of those features you can always create a definition. So these are various features of caste system. Please tell me if anyone has any issue with any of the features here, so that we can proceed forward. And Sneha has asked that it is getting worse in marrying out of caste. What may be the view on it? We'll come to it with change. We'll come to it with change, Sneha. So I understood your question right. Opposite of endogamy is exogamy. Now just think about it. Just think about this. And this question applies to everyone. If you are from a particular village, can you marry within the same village? Can you marry within the same village? If you're a girl and if you want to marry a boy from the same village, can you? Yes, the answer is no. You're not supposed to. You cannot marry within your own clan. You cannot marry within your own family, with a few exceptions that we'll discuss with family and marriage. But generally, you're not supposed to. So there are few, say, restrictions when it comes to caste system. One is endogamy. That means you are supposed to marry within your own caste group. That if you are a Brahmin, you are supposed to marry a Brahmin. If you are a Vaishya, you are supposed to marry a Vaishya. Then there are few other rules of spouse selection. Exogamy is one of those rules, which says that you are not supposed to marry within your own family, clan, etc. You are not supposed to marry within your own village. What is that? Exogamy, which is opposite of endogamy. Okay. So I hope you have understood these features, because now we are going to talk about the part from where you generally get questions, because they're not going to ask you about the features of caste system, because it will be a fairly simple question and it would not be the right question to assess your understanding of the concepts. So what they do is they generally ask questions on change. Now, can we say, let's start here, can we say that the caste system is changing? What do you think? Can we say that the caste system is changing? Okay, so most of you are saying yes, the caste system is undergoing change. But how do you find that? How can you say that the caste system is changing? Because I can say, just listen to this argument. The ones who are saying, that the caste system is changing, I say that your caste is still decided by the family that you are born in. It is passed on hereditarily. Caste system has a rule of membership by birth, which was there in the traditional society as well. Can anyone dispute this fact? No one can, because the membership by birth was a salient feature of the caste system and is still an important feature of the caste system. So the basic idea is, yes, now you are writing in the right direction. Intercaste marriage, dilution of the rigidity in terms of limited occupation and definitive occupation, great. So what you are doing is you are basically looking at various features of the caste system and trying to analyze whether there have been changes in that particular feature or not. That's what the idea is. That's how you have to approach the questions. And with this understanding, once you look at once we're done with caste system and you look at the questions that have been asked and posed on caste system, you'll find that you'll be able to answer. You just have to think about it a little, and then you'll be able to answer the question. Yes, that still doesn't guarantee whether your answer would be as presentable as they expect, but yes, with practice you can fix that as well. Okay, yes, so you still get your surnames from parents, and basically your caste identity is ascribed by birth. It depends on the family that you are born in. So now what we'll do is to look at caste system in the light of continuity and change. Before getting into the factors, what we'll do is we'll take up various features of the caste system that we have just discussed and look into those one by one. So the first feature, let's take up membership by birth, which is one of the important features. So when it comes to membership by birth, you can say that a lot has not changed. Nothing has changed, that it has remained the same. You still get your caste identity ascribed by birth. So you can simply say there has been no change when it comes to this particular feature. Also, when it comes to segmental division of society, you'll find that our society is still divided in castes. Because if you get this caste identity ascribed by birth, you'll find that on the basis of this caste identity, the society will be divided because multiple social groups will be formed. So when it comes to segmental division of society, there has been no change. The caste system has remained the same. Also, think of the hierarchy of caste system. The basic fourfold classification has remained the same, right? Can I say this? The hierarchy has remained the same. Okay, Aditya is asking, what about a person who's orphan? So the same logic applies to the traditional Indian society as well. So if you do not have a trace of the parents, then obviously there is no caste identity ascribed at birth. But it works in the same way as it does today. It used to work in the same way in the traditional Indian society as well. So yes, we can say that the hierarchy has remained the same, but how you have to go about it is that your constitution says everyone is equal. Everyone has a right to equality. Everyone has to be treated in equal manner, thereby dismantling this hierarchy. But when it comes to, so it happened on a political level. Constitution was adopted and it dismantled this hierarchy. But if you think about the social level, the hierarchy has remained the same. The same fourfold classification is being followed when it comes to matters of caste. So the Brahmins are still considered to be on the top and the Shudras are still considered to be at the bottom. Now, when it comes to the matters of restricted occupation, you can very well say that your constitution guarantees everyone right to occupation. You can take up any occupation that you want. You cannot be restricted by your caste to take up any kind of occupation. So for example, everyone is sitting here, including me. We are performing I am performing certain activity, or I'm engaged in certain work. Now it has nothing to do with my caste. Similarly, everyone preparing for the civil services is coming from a different caste group. You can take up whatever occupation you want. There can be different eligibility criterias, but caste cannot be one of those, right? I hope everyone is onboarded with this idea. Yes, Yamad, there can be changes. There can be various changes as we are evolving. So you are saying that moving from one generation to another, there'll be changes. Yes, it is very obvious that there'll be changes. So a few features will remain the same and a few will change. Okay, so we are saying that restricted and definitive occupation is not a feature of caste system, but there can be exceptions to this. Can anyone tell me an exception to this particular feature? So everyone is saying that there's no restricted and definitive occupation now because the constitution has changed. So, and we find in society people engaged in different kind of works. Great, Aditya. So Aditya is saying the role of barber in villages, particularly in rural India. So they have a few. Their role is not just limited to their place of work. You'll find that their role still extends to matters of death and marriage, right? Similarly, if you think of a priest, you'll find that more often than not, The priest will be coming from the same caste, from Brahmins. Also, you'll find various caste-based occupations that are still being carried out by the people coming from the same caste. So yes, you are giving examples like barber, cobbler, etc. Similarly, you have examples of priest. So yes, there is no restricted and definitive occupation, but there are a few exceptions to this idea. So yes, there are changes in this feature, but a few things have remained the same as well. Yes, you are right, Sumit, Himanshu, and Aditya. Then this feature of endogamy, that one is supposed to marry within their own caste group. Now, we are going to expand on this idea later as well, but this one idea is that now inter-caste marriages are more acceptable. You find more number of inter-caste marriages happening, not just inter-caste, but even inter-religious marriages happening today. But you'll still find that unless until it is a matter of love, that yes, if it's a love marriage and both the families agree, they can go about it without caring about the caste. But you'll find that when it comes to arranged marriages, which is the case today, which still is more prevalent, right? Arranged marriages are more prevalent compared to love marriages. You'll find that caste is something that is on the top priority. You can take example of your newspapers. In a newspaper, you'll still find matrimonial section, which is actually arranged by caste. Your matrimonial section is always arranged by caste. Similarly, you take few examples from your family, friends, etc., and you'll find that most of the people still marry within the same caste group. Because I've seen this in matters of love, even in matters of love, people first look for caste so that in future parents and families can agree easily, right? So yes, endogamy, there has been change that intercaste marriages are more acceptable now, but you'll still find most of the marriages happen within the same caste group. And also your intercaste marriages are not immune to your caste councils. Your caste councils or your khap panchayats are still in play, and you find a lot of incidents of honor killing happening across the country because of intercaste marriages. So you have to remember that yes, intercaste marriages happen, are more acceptable now, but then there can be the issue of honor killing related to this, wherein your khap panchayats or your caste councils come into play, but still you'll find most people marrying within their own caste group, right? Then restrictions on food, drinking, and social behavior, you'll find that now those lines have been diluted because of your constitution, because of your abolition of untouchability, because of your right to equality. You find that there can be no restrictions whatsoever on your public behavior, on your social behavior. Anyone can use whatever will they want to use for water. Everyone in the classroom coming from different caste groups sit together. You travel in your metro trains, in your buses together without caring about each other's caste. But again, you'll find that this is also limited mostly to urban areas, because in rural areas, those caste hierarchies, your caste uh, norms are still rigid. So you can always find this urban and rural divide when it comes to various features of caste system, and particularly when it comes to your social behavior and your various habits. Now again, your constitution says no privileges or disabilities for everyone. So the disabilities that the untouchables had, those have been abolished by the constitution. Then also no one has any privilege, no matter you're coming from a, it doesn't matter whether you're coming from a Brahmin family, Kshatriya family, Shudra family, everyone has to pay tax. Everyone has to pay, say, indirect tax in an equal manner. So there is no privileges and disabilities left now. So you can see that looking at these various features in the light of continuity and change, you can find that yes, A lot has changed with respect to the caste system, but the caste system has still retained a lot of its traditional features. Now, what we'll do is we are going to conclude our discussion here today. We'll start with various factors of this continuity and change. We'll also compare your Varna system to the caste system and your caste system to the class system. We'll look at the transition of Varna system, which has ultimately come down to class system today. That's something that we'll take up in tomorrow's session. But what you have to do is, please try to write that question about whether Indian society is traditional or modern. And we are going to continue this discussion. If you have any doubts related to this discussion, to these features, to the idea of continuity and change, you can ask tomorrow. But I expect everyone to at least revise the part that we have covered once, because it is not a major part. It would not take you a lot of time because most of it was introduction. And try to attempt that question as well. Yes, you do have a class tomorrow starting 10 a.m. and we'll see everyone tomorrow. And if you have any comments, any feedback, you can please let me know. Please feel free to write your comments, and we'll continue with this discussion tomorrow.